Joining me now are Anna Galland, Executive Director for Move On, and Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, I would say you're not a never-Trumper. You're not really like on the Trump train. You're sort of somewhere in between as a sort of Republican guy, Republican operative. If I were a Republican operative, I would be feeling pretty low right now. What is your feeling?
Well, I certainly felt that way after last night. I mean, the sense of failure with the Senate effort to do something on health care, to keep the vehicle moving, was profound. And there's a lot of blame to go around, honestly. 7 years, not getting consensus behind one bill, letting this process become such a mess. The product itself became a mess. So, look, I think the question now is, can Trump have a successful final 6 months of this calendar year? Next year, we have an election year. It's going to be very difficult to get much done. I think the likelihood of passing tax reform probably increases with health care failing. I think the need is there. You had the Big Six up on Capitol Hill agree on principles this week on tax reform. So we'll see where it goes from here. And I think more order and less chaos out of the White House will go a long way to helping them move their agenda forward in the final 6 months of this year.
So that's interesting. Matt, Anna, we have seen the death of a health care bill, you know, so many times. In fact, in editorial discussions, I was like, well, what do we call it? We can't, there's not only so many times we can come on air and say the health care bill is dead, you know, so you got to be very hedged. I don't know. Maybe it comes back in a few days. What is your thinking? Move On, after, obviously, one of the groups that mobilized strongly against it. What is your understanding of what just transpired and where you are in these first 6 months?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, Thursday was unbelievable. First of all, let's be really clear what happened. A moral atrocity became a political liability for Republicans. It became toxic politically. And on Thursday night, the resistance movement, which had a massive uprising over the course of 6 months, not just this week, but over 6 months, a massive resistance movement succeeded in killing a terrible idea that would have killed Americans. We've killed it. It's a zombie. It has arisen before from the grave, and if it arises again, we'll kill it back into its grave. That's the work we know we have to do. I think you're seeing people celebrating this week, rightly, because of the incredible victory that we have seen. And no one is resting on their laurels. Everyone's getting ready to fight again as much as we need to keep this terrible, destructive, cruel idea from ever seeing the light of day.
So this, what Anna just said, Matt, connects to something you just said about moving on to tax reform. There is not going to be the same level of moral vehemence in resistance to a tax bill that there is to health care for a whole variety of reasons. There will be opposition to it, strong opposition, and taxes are hard. But I guess my question to you is, do you think they will actually move on? I mean, is the idea, okay, this is finally, we've taken a bunch of L's, this one we're going to actually take and move on for exactly that reason?
Yeah, I think they will move on. I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of finger pointing as to why health care did not pass the Senate. There's going to be a lot of doubt and sort of Monday morning quarterbacking. The strategic decision to start with health care, which has traditionally been Democratic terrain, rather than starting with tax reform, which has been traditionally been Republican terrain. You know, tax reform is an issue Trump understands better. It's an issue that his team understands better. And I think there's broader unity and consensus on tax reform than there was on health care. So the question is, moving forward now, particularly with a new chief and staff in place, can this White House start operating with focus and discipline, with strategy, with communications, everyone all on the same team, all on the same page, working together. And I think the necessity is
Matt,
there.
I have some
They've
news
got to
for
get
you.
major items too.
Matt, I have some news for you. I mean, in all honesty, I just don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I think that the way that they've conducted themselves is apparent. I mean, maybe it will, and maybe Jack Kelly's a miracle worker. But I think the chaos, I think, is interesting because for folks like Matt and for allies on the Hill, the chaos is maddening. But I also think, Anna, you know, I heard from so many folks that I report on who are working in the trenches, whether it's Democratic Hill staffers or Republican Hill staffers, the chaos for people fighting the bill was also hard because they felt like there was a lot of distraction. It's interesting that both the president's allies and the president's opponents both find the chaos maddening in different ways. Do you feel like the chaos ends up no, seriously, do you feel like the chaos has made it harder to actually mobilize in opposition to the president's agenda?
It's a great question. I mean, it's also worth noting as a side note, by the way, that chaos is a kind of authoritarian ruling strategy, right? So I think all of us need to keep our eyes on both the kind of traditional politics that are happening here around trying to defeat a health care policy bill, but then also the craziness, which seems to be an intentional strategy by this White House to keep people off balance. Let's be aware of what's happening. But I think, yeah, it's made it harder, and it's made it all the more remarkable that the resistance movement just killed the top priority of this administration and of the GOP. The thing that was supposed to be passed on day one was just beat back by a movement of people that started mobilizing in December, that flooded town halls, that showed up every time a senator or a member of Congress would possibly show their face back home. They were confronted by people saying, hell no, you are not going to do this to us. And they're not going to just stop with health care. One thing I want to be clear on, if tax reform comes up, yes, that's a different issue than health care, but people are fired up to stop this entire toxic agenda.
No,
we're not done.
I wouldn't undercount that. Anna Galland and Matt Mackowiak, thanks for both making time.